All right, everyone. Hopefully, today's session was helpful for you, just kind of understanding at least some of the basics of vector graphics. Like I said, if you really want to learn a lot more about vector graphics, this is just kind of real quick kind of overview. This is not meant to be a full, course about vector graphics. I strongly recommend you take the digital illustration course. Um, That would go over much more in depth Adobe Illustrator. It would get much more in depth with building custom vector shapes, using the pen tool and editing them, using things like fill and stroke and all these kind of various things. Okay. Um, so I'm giving you guys a discussion question. So much like with the last week, I wanted to know, what your experience with raster programs like Photoshop or Clip Studio Pro or anything like that would be. Here, I want to kind of know what you've been, if anything, you've done with, vector programs. Have you used something like, Adobe Illustrator or Figma before? This one's a little less common, so there's no wrong answer. If you haven't, that's perfectly fine. You can say, yeah, no, I've never done anything. Or maybe you have, or maybe you've dealt with vectors inside of another program. Um, if you did, what'd you do? Could you share it with us? I'd love to see it. I always like seeing what students are doing and kind of getting an idea of what their knowledge background is. Then I'm giving you guys, so that is due. Today is the second, Groundhog's Day. This was recorded ahead of time, so I don't know if Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow or not, but whatever. This will be due not this Friday, but the following Friday. And the second part is I'm giving you guys a very kind of brief, simple lab to do about vectors. If you're using Figma, use this instructions. If you're using Adobe Illustrator, use this one. Kind of goes through the basics of just kind of creating a simple document or artboard, creating, custom vector shapes, playing around with fill and stroke real quickly, using Pathfinder, that kind of fun stuff. Okay. So this will be due, today's the second. This will be due not this Friday, but the Friday after next. Okay, which is the 13th. All right, so it has been about, 2.5 weeks. We finally get to talk about motion graphics. Okay, now that we have a little bit understanding of graphics as a general concept, actually, I guess it's been 3 weeks, 3.5, yeah, 2.5 weeks. So next class, we'll finally get into After Effects and talk about motion graphics and how we can use raster graphics and vector graphics to our advantage to make some animated, interesting compositions. Okay?